Welcome to the Walk Around Podcast. Our goal is to share with you the insights, the skills, the processes, and the leaders that are influencing the retail automotive landscape today. I'm one of your hosts, Nick Funsch, as always, joined by Danny Vendrell. Good morning, Danny.
Morning, Nick. Good to see you.
Good to see you. I still got, I think, a little birthday hangover.
Yeah.
1 year of the pod, but nothing like some good guests to cure that for us, right?
For sure.
And I'm super excited about today's guest, Peter Leto. And Peter is the Chief Executive Officer at Foundation Direct. Good morning, Peter.
Hey, good morning, guys. How are you?
We're good. We're good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's a rainy 56-degree day here in Detroit. I think fall is in the air.
Well, 56 degrees in South Florida. I don't know if we've ever seen that, but if we did, I can guarantee you'd see some Ugg boots and some big puffy jackets.
We're holding on to our shorts right now as long as we possibly can. But 75 yesterday and back to 56 today. Welcome to the Midwest.
Well, as soon as it gets in the 70s, generally speaking, you will see some Ugg boots at the school pickup line. So. But you got to use them. If you own them, you got to wear them. So
that's right.
But, Peter, let me just give a quick introduction because I think it will help kind of level set you and your expertise in this space. Chief Executive at Foundation Direct, you help guide the company's long-term strategy and bring a track record of, I love this word, future-proofing a business with the customer's best interests at heart. Prior to that, 11 years at Google, where you led the General Motors U.S. business, and prior to that, founded Google's automotive retail practice. Did I say that all right?
You got it, sir. That's correct.
Man, I'm getting this down. During that time, partnered closely with OEMs to modernize dealer programs and improve cross-tier digital advertising. Also helped Google to begin kind of consulting with regional ad associations and groups. Just providing them with the tools they need to optimize their ad spend and their investment there. So let's take a walk around with Peter. Peter, a lot of different things going on in the industry between the disruption of the pandemic, between the chip shortage. Give us your kind of pulse on the industry right now.
Yeah, Nick, Danny, I'm trying to remember a time where we've had consecutive years of different issues affecting the automotive industry like we have now. But as usual, dealerships are resilient and everyone's trying to make the best of it. Not to belabor on points everybody already knows, but we know that, there's record transaction prices. Dealer profitability has never been higher. New car and used car prices are at all-time highs. We're obviously aware of what's happening from an inventory perspective, less than 30 days supply for dealers out there today. 1 million vehicles are available for retail sales compared with 3 million in 2019. But what's interesting is consumer demand has never been higher. The demand hasn't stopped. And that's the hard part that we're talking to a lot of dealerships about today is we can't slow down demand. And while the inventory isn't there or the exact vehicles consumers want aren't there, how do you still meet the needs of these consumers at a time where we've never seen demand as high? In the last 60 days, just to give you a stat, 14 search interest for vehicles is up 14% compared to 2019. And we're going back to 2019 because 2020 was so crazy. And unpredictable, but we're seeing dramatic search interest increases across brands. And so the question becomes, how does a dealership meet the need of a consumer despite inventory constraints?
Isn't there a component too? I mean, yes, demand is there from the consumers, but consumer expectations on how they're treated through that process and kind of the response times and all of that. That seems to be at an all-time high too. What are some of your thoughts there?
Yeah, 100% it is. We always at Google used to say, extraordinary is the new ordinary. And you heard us always on stage when we had the pleasure of talking at industry events and podcasts like yours, that, consumers' expectations are never higher of dealerships business. And I think the challenge there is, can dealerships market today at the speed of the customer? Can they provide them with the information they're looking for quickly and seamlessly to meet their needs? And candidly, Nick, Danny, that's one of the reasons we left Google and started Foundation Direct, to try to help dealers take advantage of consumers, meeting them with the right messages at the right time in the marketplace.
And so, like, how do dealers attack that? I mean, there's a component of that that's kind of there's a lot of data associated with a consumer. How does a dealer kind of use that data to impact the customer experience and ideally increase their kind of throughput through the store?
Yeah, let me do this. I'll give you kind of 5 things we generally talk to in terms of marketing the speed of a customer, and then you can tell me if you want me to go deeper into any one of them or if you want to
Yeah,
discuss them further. Does that sound good?
yeah.
Number one is former CEO and chairman of Google, Eric Schmidt, always said, "In God we trust, everyone else bring data." And it's a saying that I continue to love to this day, and I continue to use it. And I do actually source that one correctly because you can Google it, so I don't take credit for it. But I really love that saying because number one is, do you, Mr. or Mrs. Dealer, own your own data? Do you
Mhm.
have access to your account information? Do you have a Google Analytics account that you regularly look at? We know our dealerships are so good down to, the penny of what payroll is at or what inventory levels are at, understanding their own finances at the dealership. But I will say that in my experience, having the privilege, especially at Google, of talking to hundreds and thousands of dealers every single year, many weren't looking at their analytics and many didn't even have access to their data. So
Mm.
step one is like you can't make decisions for your dealership unless you're reviewing the data and have access to that. Most dealerships don't actually have access to their marketing information today. That's usually held by their agency of record. So I think it's important for dealerships to gain access to that data. If it's okay to continue, number two is you
Yeah.
have to define a measurement strategy. You can't be blindly wondering how you're performing if you haven't defined what you care about. This is again another problem that I think a lot of people miss. And while there's no perfect model out there today, I think there's a lot of partners who claim they have the secret sauce or the secret model. I think it's important to pick a model for a dealership to start to measure success against and really look at how their marketing is driving to those goals. I can talk to you a little bit more of our philosophy there, but essentially, do you value lead forms? Do you value other engagement on your website? And how do you then hold all your marketing partners accountable to driving what those metrics that you care about? The third thing I would say is dealers need to market across profit centers now more than ever.
Okay.
The inventory challenge that we've seen today obviously is pointing to very limited new car inventory out there. And I think historically, due to the pressures from OEMs and the marketplace, new car gets the lion's share of attention from a marketing standpoint. I will tell you, I left Google in February of 2020. So it's, been a little bit of
Yeah.
time. But when I left, less than 10% of dealers were advertising used car with Google, and less than 20% were advertising service.
Wow.
So I think in today's atmosphere, especially with the cross shopping that is happening today, 59% of consumers who come in on a new car search will actually look at used car inventory, for example. It's important to make sure you have a ad strategy across your profit centers. The fourth thing I would point to is it's really critical, especially now, to have an inventory-based solution. What does that mean? You need to market the inventory you have. A
Okay.
lot of times, dealerships market core models.
Yeah.
Agencies on behalf of dealerships advertise the same models every single month. On the used car side, they only advertise CPO, not the actual inventory a dealership has that's off brand, if you will.
Right.
And this is problematic. It leads to a lot of wasted budgets, and I could explain more there. And then the final thing is, I think it's really important for dealers to understand where their ad dollars are being placed. And I think less is more in today's world. I think for dealerships, when I was at Google, I observed dollars being spread across 30, 40, 50 different platforms every single month for an individual dealer. And I think this was in the best interest of some of the agencies executing media on behalf of dealers, where they would get high margins on media execution versus what actually performed. Platforms like Facebook, Google, Bing, YouTube are really critical, and all the only places I think dealers need to be today to actively reach these in-market shoppers and drive performance. And I think it's really important for dealers to assess what their presence looks like on those platforms and how it actually compares to other media that's out there today.
I've got a great example of that, just of kind of two pieces. So this week, get home from work, go check the mailbox, open up the mailbox. I had not one, not two, not three, but four of the exact same mail piece
Yeah.
from 4 different dealers
Yeah.
hit my mailbox on the exact same day.
Exact same day.
And it was a postcard and probably a low thing, and scan the QR code. Looked the exact same. 2 from one brand and 2 from 2 separate. So 3 total OEMs represented. And I thought to myself, if these dealers knew that, okay, whomever sold them on this kind of like, this engagement, that they're marketing the same person for 4 different people and 2 in the same OEMs, like they would go bonkers to me. And like, for me, it's like how that happens, I don't know. But I think it speaks to the power of consumers engage differently. And when you're making that investment and like spreading it, like taking that shotgun approach and just, I'm going to do a little here, a little there, like you got to be strategic about that, right?
Well, absolutely. And I came from traditional media. I started my career in TV ad sales. Candidly, when I had an opportunity to work at Google, I didn't even understand what Google did,
Right.
or its significance.
I mean, can I ask you, do you understand now what they do? I mean,
A little bit. Just
okay.
After 12 years, I'm here now.
Right.
I got a long way to go. But I mean, I think you're exactly right, Nick. And a couple things happen there. Like I think we have to flip our mindset. I still see this today. I sit in a lot of tier 2 meetings. I sit in a lot of dealership planning meetings, and we start with planning like, well, what are we going to do with our traditional budgets for next year? A lot of people are planning for next year right now.
Yep.
And then they go, okay, now once we cover off on our sports sponsorship and our direct mail and, this radio sponsorship, and yes, they give you nice tickets to nice events. Now
Right.
let's think about what's left over for digital. But, go back to your mail example for a minute. Were you even in market for a vehicle at the time? Maybe not, or probably not, or maybe that was stale data, or it's just driving awareness. And then, you take that same dollar and you put it online, you're hitting someone who's in market. And in a lot of cases, you're only paying if somebody interacts with the ad format, whether they click, whether they watch a video in full. I mean, imagine if a dealer could send you direct mail and only pay if someone actually like read it. That's something that I think is so different. But still, when we plan and we talk about media today, I often observe people starting with, okay, what did I do from a traditional standpoint last year? And then, okay, what's left over and how do I best apply that to digital?
Yeah, it's interesting. So if I'm the dealer that sent those 4 separate postcards in digital, you're only paying for it if I actually scan the QR code, right? Which I'm certain
if it's a search ad, you're only paying if they click. If a video ad on YouTube, like they literally have to watch the entire ad in full, voluntarily choose to not skip it to then get charged. So it's almost like you get the free branding without paying. And the argument will be, well, direct mail is so cheap. It's, it's only, 15, 20 cents. Well, a video ad is only 2 or 3 cents.
Right.
So there is efficiencies to be gained, and it's where your customer is. When you're walking to your mailbox at the end of the day, are you really in the mindset for shopping for a car versus, I know you went to your computer, I know you searched for a new Toyota, I know you went to a dealer website, you then go to Facebook or YouTube, and you're, just doing something social, and you just showed me you were in the mindset, and I'm going to continue the conversation. So.
Danny, what are some of your thoughts about that? Have you got any direct mail pieces? Just curious.
No, not recently, but I'll be on the lookout in my mailbox to see. It's interesting too, just to tag onto that. I think part of the value in the digital side is in the testing that you can do. And yes, there's pros and cons to both. And maybe the strategy that's right for a dealer that's listening to this is a little bit of both. But, kind of world where the demand is so high and the market is as competitive as it is, getting the message right is so important. You can do that so fast and so cheaply on digital, where on a print ad, you're going to get maybe one shot at that, and you're not going to be able to potentially get the attribution that you're looking for to help make future decisions on the ads that you run. But I want to double click on one thing that you said, Peter.
Can we just pause there real quick? Look at Danny bringing in the double click.
The double click. I know.
That was awesome. Like bringing in the double click. All right. I'm gonna use that. Let me write that down. Double.
There you go. Yeah, take a note on that, Nick. We could talk more about that later. So I want to double click on something that you said. We talked about kind of that 5-pronged approach to thinking about your marketing and how you're doing that, and getting the access to data is so critical. And then number 2, which I think is great that you followed up with, is okay, because if you don't have the access to the data today, and then you get access to data, it's probably going to be like reading a different language. Like there's just so much there. And how do you make a decision on that? And I'm curious, like, just how has that evolved over the last year, that measurement strategy, what dealers are thinking about and how they could make good decisions once maybe a step one for listening to this podcast is getting access to the data. Once you get it, what should dealers be thinking about?
Yeah, Danny, I'll give you our philosophy, and we can debate it, and talk about the holes in it or not. But I think from our perspective, there's a lot of discussion on measurement right now today, and with upcoming privacy laws that are creeping across the country, whether it's what's happening in California, or even companies like Apple and others, essentially getting rid of cookies and remarketing lists, if you will, something that will be something of the past eventually here. I think understanding, people who are promising this one-to-one marketing, people who are promising, I know someone saw your ad and came to your dealership and converted. That philosophy might work today, but it's sort of going away. And I think some people in the industry are pushing towards like, let's measure in that component, let's measure the impact of an ad down to a sale. That might work today, that might work for a few more months or another year, but eventually due to privacy laws, that's not going to be possible. So it gets us back to, well, what do you measure then? Our philosophy at Foundation Direct is, let's set up your analytics appropriately. Most dealers have a Google Analytics account. When we were at Google, we did an assessment of dealerships and found 90% of dealers were using a Google Analytics account. Was it set up correctly? That's another story.
Right.
What was it being tracked appropriately? I don't know. But what we like to look at is, first of all, what are the lead goals that we can measure and report against? I want to be clear, only about 20% of customers will submit some sort of physical lead to a dealership. When I say a lead, I mean a form, I mean a phone call, I mean a chat, any of those like hard conversions of here's my name and information. But what we start with is say, great, let's measure that 20%. Let's see what mediums are driving the greatest impact for your dealership to gain access to this person and try to maximize those. And so we have that conversation with the dealer. We look at their website, like what are these opportunities you offer for a customer to interact with you, to get in touch with you, and let's set up goals within analytics to measure which sources are driving the most of those. But we also want to have that conversation about, well, what about the other 80%? Because if we only measure what 20% are doing, then we're going to make continual decisions on only what 20% of the population is doing and may miss things that are impactful for the other 80%. And that's where we try to talk to our dealerships about setting up different events within Google Analytics that help us measure how a customer who didn't submit a lead interacted with the site. It's looking at things in its most simplest form, like time on site. It's looking at, how many people scrolled through photos, maybe didn't, submit a lead on the VDP, but looked at 10 photos of a specific vehicle. Those are the types of things where we're starting to try to understand, was this an engaged customer and how do we know this was an engaged customer? And I think when you have a formula like that, you can sort of bucket this into two areas where you first start off with, how do I maximize my leads? What are the sources that are driving the most of them? Can I squeeze more out of those sources? And a lower cost per lead, if you will. And then, okay, I have a source. Maybe it's YouTube, maybe it's Facebook, maybe it's something else like email blasts that isn't driving those leads. How do I know that this is quality traffic? And if we can point to it's still quality traffic, and here's the reasons why, then I think that can help dealerships understand, okay, this might not be the last thing that drove the lead, but it is influencing the intent of a customer. Let's keep these metrics. But for those that aren't submitting leads and are really low engagement, I can cut that spend. And that's the way we're starting to look at it today.
Isn't there? I mean, there's just a component almost of like understanding your sales funnel or your prospect funnel, whatever you want to call it, and kind of where they are. And the lower they get, the more you can kind of dial in exactly what they're doing. But when they're more in the top of the funnel, kind of understanding where those dollars are spent, and more importantly, how to get them to move down a step, right? Helps you. Is that kind of what you're saying conceptually?
It does. And, one thing I observed during our time at Google is we had the pleasure of working with many of the agency partners who execute media on behalf of dealers. And we often saw, from a search perspective, and as an example, the way the accounts were structured were tailored to more hitting customers who were initially beginning their research than at a lower point of the shopping process. And this puzzled us because we tried to bring best practices to the industry. Here's where you're playing today. Here's where you should be playing. Here's some tools and resources, Mr. and Mrs. Agency, that can help you understand how to make the changes. And we didn't see those changes being made. That probably led to one of the reasons we exist and left cushy jobs at a great company to try to execute this on our own. So my message there, Nick, if it's not clear, is I think part of it is setting up your measurement strategy, but the other part is, the execution. It's holding partners like us accountable for, how do I know I'm hitting that in-market shopper to begin with, and not that person who might be first starting their research journey. Maybe I'm a large dealership and I want to hit that person at the beginning of research, but otherwise, maybe that's the role of what tier 1 and tier 2 should be doing. And how do I maximize those lower funnel customers?
Yeah, I think that's great. So, lot to unpack there. I think kind of accountability with your partners is a big one. Danny, kind of what are some of your thoughts on the conversation today?
Yeah, no, I think that point is probably my biggest takeaway. Like if the partner that you're using today isn't taking it to the level where some of the milestones we talked about, or maybe you listen to this and something that kind of stuck out is the idea of attribution and privacy and everything that's happening out there in the world, and your agency isn't bringing that to you, isn't shifting your strategy, isn't talking about the impacts of that, you should be asking some questions, because that's one of those worlds where if you don't ask and you don't poke the bear, there's really, what's in it for them for bringing it to you. And I'm sure, Peter, you deal with that every day, and kind of the way that there may be some agencies in the world and how they operate with dealers. And hey, but the world's evolving and the technology is evolving, and so asking those questions is so important.
Yeah, for sure.
And if I may just piggyback on that, the number one question we got at Google was, how do I know my customer or my agency is doing a good job?
Yeah.
And so that's tough, right? That's a tough question to answer. And some dealerships might not feel they have the expertise to do so. So I would offer you, all listeners, a piece of advice, which is just start with the basics. Start with gaining access to the data and then asking the simple question of why. Like, why are you placing my ad dollar in against paid search versus Facebook, or paid search versus this third party lead? Or why is 50% of my money in display advertising when I'm seeing that display advertising isn't as engaged of a shopper as I'm getting from search or YouTube or Facebook or wherever that is? If you just start with whys, make your partner give you an explanation there that's rooted in data, and that can help. And I think that's a good starting place for a lot of dealerships today to gain access there, and then ask the why question and see how satisfied you are with those answers.
I think that's great advice. No matter if you're dealing with your kind of agency or any partners, 5 whys, right? I heard that many. Like, just keep drilling into why,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And I think eventually you'll get to the data, and it helps shine that light. So, Peter, this has been fantastic. Really enjoyed the conversation. Where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, please come to foundationdirect.com is our website. Happy to email me at peter@foundationdirect.com. If you'd like, we'd be happy to chat with you. We do offer anyone a free audit. We are a group of Googlers. Myself and our executive team all came from Google. We offer audits of your search accounts in the same format that we used to do at Google. We recreated a lot of the tools that we used to do there on our end. So if anyone ever wants an audit to help answer that question, we can do that for you. Again, it's all rooted in data, and it helps your dealerships answer those questions as to, how am I performing here?
Awesome. Well, the other big takeaway I got from today is, like, can I just double click into that conversation for a second? Like,
there you
double
go.
click. I'm gonna have to start using it. Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Well, if you like this episode, be sure to share it with your friends, click the like button, but also don't forget to shoot us an email. Let us know what you liked, but also other topics you're interested in. So for Danny, for Drew, for Peter, thank you for listening to the walk around. And until next time, we'll talk soon.
Thank you.